Hey there, want to know if you should know the ending to your story before you begin writing? Join me and Melissa J Massey as we find out in issue one of the storytelling show. Hi, hello everyone. Welcome to issue one of the storytelling show. And I'm so happy that I've got my favorite author and favorite comic book creator, Melissa J Massey, on the show. So, Melissa, welcome to issue one of the storytelling show.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're way too kind. So nice compliments.
Oh, well, it's great to have someone like you on the show. Um, we'll talk about your background in just a little bit, but the theme of today's show um, is, should I know my ending before I start the story? So it's a question I sometimes do know the answer to this. I kind of think I know the answer to it, and when I start writing, I realize I don't. So, Tyler, so just quickly, you've written a number of comic books. Just give us a brief description of the comic books, and we'll dive into more detail into those after we talk about the question.
Sure thing. So I am your purveyor of fine fantasy comics and tragic shenanigans, and I have two currently ongoing series, Black Ball, a magical murder mystery in an alternate 1920s, and my currently on Kickstarter series, The Alchemist of Aurelia, a Turkish fantasy about a young wizard who hopes an old legend is true to stop a witch's revenge. So mostly playing around in the fantasy genre there. Leaning more into action and adventure. And when it comes to how I approach these stories, right? There's really two endings when you approach any story. There's the story's ending, the climax, the resolving action. And then I also like to think there's a character ending where things wrap up and things are resolved for the characters themselves after that, like plot kind of winds up.
So when we talk about knowing the endings, how often have you written the ending and actually wrote a script that fits that ending? Is it, I mean, you could give a percentage if you like, or how close to that ending that you wrote do you normally get?
I would say like usually within 80%, because sometimes along the way when you're writing, um, things kind of shift. The characters kind of tell you they're going in a slightly different direction, so things shift a little bit. But in general, it's that core is still there.
And do you write a specific, when you write the ending, I suppose you can revise that ending as you write. Like, how do you go about it? Did you start with a broad outline, a synopsis, or do you kind of write the ending? Does the ending emerge from the beginning, or do you actually know your ending?
Yeah, well, it's always good to start at the beginning and with the characters, because the characters are the core and the beginning is how we get to know the characters. And then when it comes to approaching that ending, it's really important to have that in place so you know where your characters are generally going to go, even if that ending needs to shift. So I do try to at least know those two parts. And then, of course, that climax that I talked about, that's the resolving of the plot. So where's the plot going? And then where do the characters need to end up once the plot is finished? And then I kind of write the outline around those items. So you have your beginning, your characters, your plot ending, your character ending.
Right. And do you think an advantage of knowing your ending helps you kind of lay more challenges or set your character up with certain weaknesses at the start? Do you go through that arc as well?
Yes. So when thinking about what you want them to accomplish by the end and where they're starting, you kind of start to know where they have to get to and what their obstacles might be. And like you said, those could be character flaws or weaknesses that they have internally, and as well as those external ones. And then you can position it through the middle because you know where you're trying to get to, those external and internal barriers. How do they play off of each other to drive your story forward?
And when you're pitching your story to whether it's on Kickstarter or to other artists, or do you, they were saying the screenwriting classes I went to is tell them your ending, but I kind of feel I never want to tell them my ending. Do you think that's important to tell people who, let's take it from an audience, so direct to audience. How do you keep it held back? Or what point of the story arc do you stop out in the pitch?
Yeah, if I'm pitching to, say, if I was going to approach a publisher or if I was going to approach an editor maybe, or like someone to work with, then I would tell them the whole thing and tell them the ending. But when it's approaching Kickstarter, or if it's telling other creators about what I'm working on, I usually tell them up until what I've actually like drawn out. So usually like issue by issue, like I'll say, oh, in this issue they're doing this. So you have the overarching story, but then you have the issue story as well. And sometimes I'll go pretty deep into what's going on in the issue.
I mean, that actually leads quite neatly into my next question. When you're writing a series like you're writing, you know the ultimate ending of whatever 3 or 4 series book. When you write the individual books, how does that work? Because well, I know how it's worked for me, but I'm kind of interested to get your insight and perspective of where does issue 1 end, and do you know the ending of the issue 1 is the ending of issue 1, but it's not the ending of the entire story. So how do you punctuate that?
It's actually a question of knowing where they have to get to by the start of the next issue. So for Alchemist of Aurelia, for example, issue 1 was kind of weird because it was a self-contained pilot. So I had one succinct, complete story in mind for that. When I got to issue 2, I knew where I wanted everyone to be by the time I got to what I thought was issue 3, but turned out to be issue 4. But I knew at least like these things had to happen so that they could get to the next setting, which is in issue 4. And it did, even though it was split into 2, it ended up working better anyway. So it is that question of, I know where they have to get, so how do I get them there by the time I get to the end of this book?
Right, okay. So there's lots of story template. No, template's a terrible word. It's archetypes. When you're, it's happy to have one here. This probably won't show up very well on screen, but whichever template or archetype or whatever you want to call it, technique you want to use, do you take the whole story and then kind of, if you want to do it in 3 issues or 4 issues, kind of stop it at a resolution point in this? Let's take this as an example. If we split that into 4, is a sensible way to stop here at issue 1, stop here at issue 2, and here at issue 3, and in issue 4 you go to the end? And if that is a technique that people can use, how do you make a story within a story? It's kind of the opposite of a scrum or scrums, but doing a story within a story. Is there a particular approach that you find has worked well for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because for me it's a little more ephemeral, I guess, because I have the basic structure in mind, but it's not something I'm heavily leaning into issue to issue because I know where we're going. So it's more so what is the natural flow for the characters and where are natural stopping points and arcs. So a great way to do this is actually by location if you're doing an adventure story. And forehand, with Battle Panda, when they're in a location and then they kind of run into a problem there, they solve that problem and they go to the next location. But what they're doing in those different locations does lean into those steps of the journey. So it's not the same. They're not always starting from point 0 just because they've gone to a new place. So for example, for me in issue 4, the cast is going to go to a new country. They have to do something specific there, but they're not like starting from point 0 where they were starting at the beginning of issue 2 where everyone had to meet and the threat had to be introduced. This is, they know the threat, they have to do this thing so that they can get to the next step to solve that threat. And then after that location, when they go to the next place, they're like, all right, we have this thing from the previous location, so we're at this step to get us to the next thing. So you're still building along, even though, you're still presenting problems that they have to get through, if that makes sense.
It does. Tell me, Ben, when you are splitting issues up and you kind of know the ultimate ending, How do you do with titles, like titles of each issue? Does one title lead you naturally into the next, which leads you naturally? And it's same for covers. I mean, if I could give a quick example, when I made Digitopia, um, I had Digitopia 1, which was Displaced Dreams, and I had issue 2, which was Terrorstar, and issue 3, which was Freedom's Illusion. And the three covers, I mean, this kind of happened organically for me. That the three covers looked distinct enough that I knew that when they would be on a shelf, a bookshelf together, that they'd have different colors, same style, but each cover now tells the story of the end point of that particular story that when put together. And this, I did not plan this out. I'm lucky I had a good designer who figured it out for me. But when you're thinking about whether it's covers of books or titles of books, knowing that specific endpoint where that book needs to go, does that dial into how the title gives a promise of that book and logically follows on from the previous book?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually been a while since I named an issue, but in the past when I have named my chapters or my issues, there was a lot of thinking about, all right, what is happening in this chunk of the story that you want to intrigue people and bring them in. So for example, in one series I was doing, the third chapter was called like the tragic incident of character name, right? So that kind of brings you in like, man, it's chapter 3. I've never heard this character's name before, and now I know something tragic is happening to them. I got to read this to find out what's going on, because the first 2 chapters were about our main group of characters, and then it was like shifting to this other character. So it kind of was promising the intrigue that something was going to happen, almost like the train wreck you can't look away from, that kind of almost horror to it. So definitely those are considerations one should take. And then for covers, this is actually something I really do with Black Ball, because I was inspired for the covers by the old like Nancy Drew books and Hardy Boys, where they used to have the covers that they had like a painted scene on them. So it's something I kind of leaned into for that series, because it is supposed to have that more vintagey feel of the 1920s. So each cover kind of is a representation of events that happen in that book, but put together and done in a like an artsy way. So if you're looking at the book, you're really intrigued by it and want to read on to see what all this stuff is. And then after you've read it, if you go back and look at the cover, you'll be like, oh, that's what that was, and that's why they're posed like this, or that's what this means.
Well, while we're on that subject, then you got a Kickstarter. Well, at the time of this recording, you have a Kickstarter live. It's for tell us about it, and tell us in a way that doesn't give the ending away.
Sure thing. So this is for The Alchemist of Aurelia. This is to print number 3, but you can get all 3 issues. So if you're new, you can pick up the whole series and get caught up. Like I said at the top of the show, it is a Turkish fantasy. It's about wizards, witches, jinns, all kinds of magic creatures, and our main protagonist, Nurie, is almost practically wizard, who thinks that she can just read something in a book and understand it, and she's learning pretty quick that she needs some practical experience. And she's about to go on a quest to find the lost atelier of this guy, the Alchemist of Aurelia, because he's the only person who ever defeated a witch, and now a witch is coming to destroy her home. So she's going out on this quest to see if she can figure out where this place is and if it has the answers that she needs.
I love it. It's well, we'll talk about the exact story later, but is that a total 3 issue series, or is it part of an ongoing?
So it's still ongoing. We're actually in an exciting part where they're really gonna go on the journey. So like I said, in issue 4, they're gonna go to a new place, which is gonna be really exciting. I fingers crossed hope it's gonna be 10 issues. I have it all outlined out and planned out. I'm hoping I don't have, like I had this time where I had to split 2 and 3 apart. I think it was just there I had to split it. I think everything else, if I'm looking at my outline correct on the wall, should line up correctly. And I'm doing about 2 books a year, so we're going at a good pace. And so, yeah, I'm keeping it manageable, trying to keep in the reins so that we get the series done, and then you can have the whole thing to read. in a few years.
Fantastic. Well, I'm backing. I'm about the first one. I'm backing the next one and the next one, and it's a great series. That's one of the reasons why I know you're one of my favorite writers because of these stories. Okay, so we're going to I'm going to try this quick fire quiz. Not a quiz. There's no right or wrong answer, and it doesn't have to be quick fire at all. If you don't want it, if you want to take long over it, we can. So a couple of quick fire questions for you. So we're recording in 2022. So what does a 2017 version of you wish? What would you like to go back in 5 years and tell you? I haven't really formed the question, but what do you wish you could have told yourself 5 years ago, which is different to what do you wish you knew 5 years ago? On your personal journey, having done this for 5 years, what would you, if you could hop back to 2017, tell yourself?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it was only 5 years ago, but at the time, I think that was the time I almost quit comics. I think it was 2016, 2017. So I would tell myself that, the decisions that I'm trying to make at that time, that they're the right decisions to leave certain series behind and pursue new series. It's the right decision, keep going, and take the risks. I'd probably tell myself, yes, you will run a Kickstarter someday and it will go very well. So just keep going.
Excellent. What's the next question? What's more important to success? Is it discipline or is it talent?
Discipline, 100%. Because you need to sit down and do this every day for a long time, forever, and you get very tired. So yeah, you need the discipline to keep doing it.
Well, I hear that. Tell us what, as part of being a creative, not just as a writer, as being from everything that comes along with a creative, what's your least favorite part of being a creative, and how do you overcome that?
There's a few things. I guess it depends on the day, how I'm feeling. No, I think the main thing, if I'm thinking of one thing, is just the time aspect and how it can be very stressful to feel like you don't have enough time to do all the things you want to do. And that can really weigh down on you, especially you and I both have day jobs that we have to balance with all the creative work we want to do and to try to push things forward. So I know for me, I feel behind a lot of the time, and that weighs on me a lot. So yeah, just not having the time I would like to get more work done, I think is the worst of it.
Yeah, it feels like a constant. As soon as you get to one base, there's the next one waiting. It's like swimming. You get to one island, there'll be the next one and the next one. No matter how far you keep or long you keep working for, how far you keep going, you just keep seeing that, and it's always tantalizingly close. But I feel that as well. Okay, tell us then, what's your favorite part about being creative?
So I work on paper still a lot of the time. So seeing something that started as a blank piece of paper and having physically put something on it to make it a thing in the world that didn't exist before, I think is the best part.
Absolutely, it is, and that's kind of why we do it. We don't get what percentage of time of your work do you actually get to say that best part? 5%, 2%?
Yeah, maybe about there.
Well, I don't want to end it on a downer because it is such a good thing. So if you wanted to tell us what your favorite film or TV show, or what are you watching right now that you think would be valuable for other people to watch?
My husband and I just rewatched Gundam the 8th MS Team. I grew up, watching a lot of anime on TV. We had the Toonami block here in the US, and it had a bunch of different Gundam series, but this was the one I fell in love with. It's just such a great, succinct storytelling that I think gets lost in a lot of these longer series that you see nowadays. It's like 50 episodes, hundreds of episodes, but in 11 episodes, they tell this really complete, striking war story that gets to the heart of a lot of tough questions to reconcile with. It's a very special series in my heart, just because of how it handles that masterful storytelling. So that's something we watched recently that we've really enjoyed.
Okay, you'll have to ping me that link so I can put it into the show notes at the end. Okay, great. So last question. And what's your favorite book on writing, or which book on writing do you think has influenced you the most?
I don't know if it's technically on writing, but I think it's a really important book for any kind of creator to have. So writing, or even a musician, and that's called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. It's something I come back to every time I'm feeling really defeated, because it talks about the struggle of creating, and that you're not alone in this. Everyone kind of feels this, and it gives you some tools to get past it. It's a little more, it's not like there are steps or a prescriptive way. It's a little looser than that, but anytime I'm just feeling discouraged, I pick it up, I'll read a little bit of it, and then I'll start feeling better and feeling reinvigorated to tackle this complicated, difficult thing that we call creating.
That's great. Right, I'll add that to my reading list, or my listening list. Great. Thank you so much, Melissa, for going through. It's been really valuable for me. I hope it's been valuable for everyone else watching this. Where is the best place? And you can give more than one place if you want to. Where's the best place where people can find out more about you and your work?
Sure. On my email list, it goes out every week. I try to keep up with things I'm doing and cool things I'm finding. So if you go to melissajmassey.com/welcome, you can sign up. You get some free comics when you sign up. I also include other little things throughout the year, freebies, other cool things. I do little content series within the email list. My favorite one being National Final Song of the Week during Eurovision season. I usually also do a Eurovision Top 5, which is one of my most popular emails of the year. People seem to like it, even if they don't know what I'm talking about. And so, yeah, that's the best way to find out what's going on with me. If you'd like to follow me on social, I am on Facebook, The Art of Melissa J Massey. I do post there from time to time, and I am also on Instagram at Byzantine Tifosi. So you can find me there. I post art, I post videos of some process work and coloring, and peeling off masking film from airbrushing. People love that, so I make videos of that.
Perfect. Well, I'll stick all of the links in the description. Thank you all for watching the show. Hope it's been valuable for you. If you'd like to follow me, just hit subscribe on this. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, obviously. If you don't, then don't. But give me a subscribe. Follow me at digitopiafilm.com. Thank you all so much. Thanks again, Melissa. And we shall see you hopefully on episode 2 of the storytelling show. Thanks so much. Bye-bye, everyone.